have the ability to say no. Just say no to drugs. Say no to idol worship, okay? And now the question is going to be exactly where is this drive? Where is this draw? Where is this error of idol worship that's coming to us every moment? So let's continue back into the origin story of the one who stood up against all of idol worship. And then in the next couple days, we're going to make this very practical, very down to earth, how every single second we're being convinced that maybe there is some other power that I should look to. Because, when inflation hits, and nobody wants to say the R word, right? We won't talk about that one. Even though it's all inevitable, seemingly. You can't print money forever and think nothing's going to happen. So we start looking for, well, how are we, where do we turn to? Where do you turn to? Where do you turn to when your Bitcoin's down from 70K to 21, 19? Where do you turn to? Where do you turn to when something happens and somebody steps on your foot and they're wearing steel-toe boots and it really hurts, and maybe there's going to be a need, lo aleinu, for corrective, foot work because of that? Where do you turn to at that moment? What happens inside of us when situations like that happen? And this is happening all the time. Where do I turn to? Where do I put my hope and my faith and my trust? Okay, that's how we're going to pull this into a very practical avodah, very practical how idol worship is still alive and well today. It's an amazing thing that we have an expression, the almighty dollar. It's an amazing thing, the almighty.
And on the dollar, in God we trust.
Yeah, in God we trust. The almighty. I know it's a bit funny to say it like that, but wait a second, wow. You don't usually say almighty for anything but God. There's some hope, like if I have money in the bank, then it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. So let's just go a little bit deeper into the origin story of, we already spoke about how idol worship started. Now we're going into how that one great human being stood up against the tides of idol worship in the world. And let's see a little bit more some of the things that he was telling people at that time to dissuade people. So we mentioned, remember Avram Avinu? And he was in the idol shop, and his father Terach was the expert, biggest idol worship in the world. And then he said, Pop, put me in charge of the shop for the day. It's going to be good, don't worry. And what happened? Shalom, shalom. So what happened? His father went out, and somebody would come into the idol worshiping shop, and what would he say to the person? He would say, so how old are you? He'd say, I'm 50 years old. So he would say, well, you're going to buy an idol that we made yesterday? This idol's 1 day old and you're 50. You're 50-year-old worshiping something that was just made? And the guy would feel very bad that his decision didn't make any intellectual sense, and he would walk out. Not a good way to make business, but Avram Avinu was not in the business to make business. He was in the business to teach people how to use their brains. And then look what happened. There was one time, Chadzman asa chade itza te'ina bido chade pinach de soilus. There was one time that a woman came in, and she was holding this big, large plate of finely ground flour. Now, why would you bring finely ground flour to a shop full of idols? What do you think? Probably because you want to offer the flour to the idols. You want to give an offering to the idols, And by the way, it's not so different the things that people do nowadays to get approval, to get... It's sad, some of the people I know in certain businesses and certain things, what they had to... There's certain child actors that I knew growing up. It's almost painful, the things that they had to do to move up. It's very sad. They had to offer themselves up to to get approval, to get something. This is sad stuff here. So she said, I brought in this plate. So what did she say? Amrulay, Hala karev kadmein. So she said, look, Avram, take this flour and give it to the idols. It's a shop filled with idols. I brought an offering. Let's serve the idols together. So what did he do? It's a bit intense and graphic. Kam nesiv buklasa bidei. Avram got up. He took an axe in his hand. V'yahav bulkasa bidei dera, and he smashed all the idols. He got up. This poor lady just said, let's offer up some stuff. He takes an axe and smashes all the idols. Not, I guess, what she had in mind when she was coming in. He didn't hurt her. And then what did he do? And then he put the axe in the hand of the biggest idol. Okay? Came into Asa Avua, and then what happened? In the meantime, his father came home from the idol worshipping ceremony, back to his shop, expecting to see all of his idols, and he see that everything is smashed. And what did the father say? Amalei, man avid lahayin bideng. Who did all this? Who smashed all the idols? So Avram said, Amalei, ma nichpor minoch. I don't want to deny to you what happened, my father. Asa chada, itza ti'in Allah. You should know, a woman came in, she had flour, Amris Li, and she said, give this before the idols. And then I did. I put the flour there, but you know what happened all of a sudden? And then each one started to say, Ane echel kadmoi. V'deinamar ane echel kadmoi. Even I want to eat it first. And the other, no, I'm going to eat it first. And they started fighting. Yeah, I just tried to get out of there. It was insane. Pops, it's a good thing I'm still alive to tell the story. You understand what this was. And then in the end, this largest one took the thing and he smashed the ganze oilam over there. And what did Terach say? Amalei mata mafbi. You making fun of me? V'yadin inun. These idols, do you think they know what's happening around? Do they talk? Do they move? Can they do anything? Now these words put goosebumps. Amalei. Lo yishmu aznecha ma shapicha omer. Do your ears not hear what your mouth is saying? Do your ears not hear what your mouth is saying? Abba, they can't do anything. So why do you worship them? Why do you worship them? You made them. Why are you worshiping them? Now, you would have thought that he would have become a Baal Tshuva immediately. But instead, it wasn't that simple. And you see how deeply ingrained, if a person has their hope in the Almighty whatever, it's not so easy. It takes time to reshift our focus. If a person really believes and they have some complex that their boss controls the fate of their job, controls the fate of their bank account, controls the fate, so then it's not so easy to change that perspective. My boss. Some people, they have physiological responses when the boss walks in the room. They're like, their stomach drops, they get like nervous, their blood pressure goes up. Little physiological response. Why are you so nervous? Why, you think he controls your destiny? Why are you so nervous? So look what happened. Nasve Yumasre Nimrod. When Terach heard this, he said, let's take him to Nimrod. Nimrod at that time was the most powerful person in the world. He was the king of the world. He was one of the most evil people that ever lived. Nimrod was bad. Very bad. Very bad. Like bad. So, Amalela Avram, Niskoid Lamaya. So, Nimrod was trying to take him off the derech also. So when he got to Nimrod, Nimrod's like, Avram. Sometimes when it doesn't work, you're trying to do like a local brainwash thing, so we'll take you to a higher authority. Let's take you to the higher ups. And then we'll do some spooky heebie-jeebie thing on you and really, brainwash you, stark. So, solitary confinement and like dope the guy up with stuff, that type of stuff, and get the guy really doped and spooked out. So that's what Nimrod did. He was the head of that whole ring of psychological warfare stuff. So what did he do? So he gets to Nimrod. So he says, Amalei Lavra, Nimrod Lamaya de Maftin Nura. So he said, first thing, Amalei, Nisko Nura. So Nimrod said to Avram, so you tell me that we can't bow down to man-made things. Well, you know what we should bow down to? We should bow down to fire. Fire. Why did Nimrod want to have everyone bow down to fire? Fire is very beneficial. Fire builds things. Fire warms. Fire is we need fire. The sun is a fire element. Fire is very, you make weapons with fire. You make tools with fire. You warm up with fire. It's maybe one of the most beneficial forces in the whole world, to harness fire. So he said, let's bow down to fire. So you know what Avram Avinu said back? Such a yid. He said back, V'nisko l'maya. Why don't we bow down to water? Because water puts out fire. Water is more powerful than fire. So, like down into the fire, the water. Let's bow down to the water. Water is more chashuv than fire. So what did Nimrod say? Taka. You're making a good point. We should bow down to water. Let us bow down to water. So then he said, well, fine. Well, if you want to bow down to water, why don't we bow down to the clouds? Because the clouds carry the water. There's one thing to bow down to water, but the clouds control the water. They hold the water. They're in charge of the water. Let's bow down to the clouds. So what did Nimrod say? Taka, man, we should bow down to the clouds. Sorry. We should bow down to the clouds. Okay, how does it go from there? Well, you know what? What's stronger than the clouds? The wind. The wind pushes the clouds away. So the wind is more chashuv. And what did Nimrod say? Taka. You're right. He's making good points here. We should bow down to the wind. But then Avram Avinu said, V'niska labar enosh. But if we should bow down to the wind, here's an interesting one, then we should bow down to humans. Why should we bow down to humans?
They pass wind.
Because humans control the wind, because a person has wind inside of him, he has air inside of him, but the air doesn't just all leak out that we all shrivel up. Meaning a human has power to control air, that it actually stays inside of us in the right amount, that we don't just shrivel up. Meaning man is more powerful than wind. Because we have the right orifices, we have the right duct system, D-U-C-T, is that the right? Duct system to allow the passing and the moving of air that would make that we're more important than air. So at this point, Nimrod got nervous. Because Nimrod said, yeah, but if we worship human, then really any one human, as long as they're healthy and they don't shrivel up because of air problems, there would be no hierarchy from there because every single human would be in charge of the air. And at that point he started to think that, wait a second, maybe it's not working because then it would just be any human. And he didn't like the idea of every human bowing down to another human. It wasn't computing. So he went back to fire. Sometimes you see when a person doesn't have things thought out, or he gets to a point where something doesn't compute for him, you'll just hear a totally illogical response. Sometimes you can be speaking to somebody and you're talking about the purpose of life and making good life decisions, and he'll get to it, and then you say, so why are you in this dead-end job? So why are you still doing X, Y? And they're like, whatever. Excuse me? I gotta go. We're exactly in the middle, like we've hit the point of, I know it's uncomfortable, but maybe we can, actually address the points. You see just how deeply ingrained, if someone has cognitive dissidence, they could basically convince themselves of anything. Be very, very honest with oneself. If something makes intellectual sense and you think it through, if it's true, make it you. If it's true, make it you. So Nimrod wasn't willing to accept this. So what did he do? He said, I'm going to go back to my original fire-worshipping approach, which even though Avram Avinu told him didn't make sense. And he said, well, let me just show you. If really God is real, then he'll be able to save you from the fire. So what happened? Nimrod threw Avram into the fire, and what happened?
Nothing.
Avram was saved. Avram was saved from the fire. Now there's a side story here with Haran. What happened here? Haran was there, and he said, well, if Avram lives, then I'm with Avram. If Avram dies, then I'm with Terach. So he was waiting to see what happened. Avram lived, so he said, I'm with Avram. So then Nimrod threw him into the fire. What happened though to Haran?
He died.
But not fully. He did. Only his innards burned up. So God made a slight miracle. You might say, why didn't he just save him entirely? Because he didn't fully give his life for Hashem. He only gave it as like an extension. A person who says, God will protect me, will be meritorious to supernatural protection. The Nefesh HaChaim, which we're going to see tomorrow, his famous piece on idol worship, which is wild stuff, when we get into it a little bit more, it gets a bit Kabbalistic. And then the class after that, we're going to go into basically all the practical points, where idol worship shows up today on a practical level in 2022, Tavshin Pei Beis. Haran said, I am going not fully, so God made a half miracle, meaning it's miraculous that he came out and his external was intact and only his insides burned up, to show that there was some divine protection, but the full divine protection comes from somebody who says, God, I know that you're the only option.
Because he was outwardly believed in God, but not inside. So his outside was safe, but not his inside.
Very good. That a Jew, and this is our message to all of humanity, there's only one address for everything we need. There's only one address. Doesn't mean you're not nice to your boss. Obviously you are. Doesn't mean you're not nice to anybody in authority. But they're not the address of where any salvation comes from. Any hope, any goodness, any belief that I'm going to get something. It's only from you, Hashem. You're the only address. And therefore, let's start to think now, very practically, any time in my life that I put this hope in something else, like, oh, that thing will get me through this, or that stimulus check coming in, like that's going to carry me through, or that, fill in the blank, or that insurance payout, or that, uncle who, owes me a favor, any of that. You never put your hope in that. There's one address. And this is something that every second we can be reminding ourselves, God, I only go to you. They're the only address. Anything else is going to be in the world of idol worship. And even if people aren't whipping out, Ouija boards after this and doing like all sorts of, interesting, ceremonies and rain dances and stuff, there's this very subtle idol worship of where do we turn to? Where are we putting our hope in? There's only one address. It's you, Hashem. We should be Zarech to Mashiach Tzidkenu from here. Amen.
Amen.
Have a wonderful day, my friends. Kol Tuv.